Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us for today's webinar. My name is Candace Preston, and I am the moderator for today's session. On behalf of Leslie and the team, we thank you for joining us today. This presentation, Navistar Case Study, How a Fortune 500 Company Transformed its Supply Chain During COVID-19, will be presented by Shri Mangampally, Senior Director, Manufacturing and Supply Chain Solutions at Tata Cognitive Solutions, and Ravi Udavolu, Senior Vice President, Automotive and Industrial at Tata Cognitive Solutions, and their presentation promises to be well worth a listen. Before we get started, here are some quick administrative points. During the webinar, if you have questions for the presenters, please submit them into the Q&A box on your screen, and these will be answered during the question portion of the webinar. Likewise, for any technical issues, please write them into the Q&A section, and we'll get to those right away. You'll notice that the widgets on your screen can be resized and dragged around for your viewing preferences. I'm going to encourage you to visit the Resource Center as well on your screen for some additional content that we and our sponsors have provided for you. Before we get started on the discussion, I'd like to direct you to the poll question that will appear on your screen. And we're going to do a couple poll questions, and then we'll get right into the meat of it. So our first poll question I would like to get your feedback on is, do you currently have a control tower to create end-to-end visibility of your supply chain? You'll have two responses showing up on your screen here, either yes or no. We're going to give you a couple more seconds to take a minute to think that over and collect your thoughts, hit a response, and click the submit button on the bottom of the screen there. Thank you. 100% of our responses today have indicated that no, you don't have a control tower to create end-to-end visibility of your supply chain. Very interesting. For our next poll question, we do have one more. If you had a magic wand, what problem would you like to go away? We have 4 responses for this question, so take a minute and read them through. We'll have lack of end-to-end visibility, lack of collaboration, lack of insightful data, and lack of resources. So if you can just review your answers here, I'll give you another second to click on the response and click on the submit button on the bottom of the screen there. And our results show lack of end-to-end visibility. Great. So everybody watching, wherever you are, make sure you're sitting comfortably. And now I'm going to hand it over to Shri so we can begin.
Hello, I am Shri Mangampally, and today we are excited to discuss Navistar's journey through the current supply chain shortages and their capabilities to future-proof their supply chains. Unfortunately, Sajid couldn't be here today due to some last-minute personal reasons. I have Ravi Udavolu, our Senior Vice President at Tada, and the partner for the Navistar program with me here today, and he will talk about the journey he took with the Navistar team to create an end-to-end visibility with the supply chain control tower product utilizing Tada's digital twins. Hi, Ravi. Can you give us a quick introduction?
Thanks, Sri, and good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Looks like there are several viewers from across the globe. I'll put myself in Sajid's relatively large shoes and talk about Navistar's accelerated transformation with Tada. About Navistar, they're a 10 billion organization, and they're a leading manufacturer and solution provider for the medium duty, heavy duty, and service truck segments. They're now a wholly owned subsidiary of Traton, and therefore part of the Volkswagen Group. Coming to me, I'm a senior VP for Tada, leading pre-sales and solutions for industrial and automotive networks. I'm excited to be here and looking forward to the discussion with you and all of viewers.
Yeah, same here, Ravi. So not a day goes by without hearing one of these companies reporting less revenue due to supply chain disruptions. I understand that Navistar has been weathering the storm better than anyone else. Can you tell us how it all started? Where was Navistar when the pandemic was hitting us hard?
When COVID hit the US last year, it created significant stress on the supply chain. There were labor shortages, suppliers' facilities shut down. There was financial risk for the ecosystem and considerable transportation delay that hampered the ability to produce and meet customers' expectation. We have all seen it, right, with all the way from chips to toilet papers. For Navistar, it was no different. They had no visibility outside the four walls. The planners, buyers, and the extended supply chain teams were on phone calls and spreadsheet talking to suppliers, transportation providers to understand the risk at a part level. And they were going through significant analysis to tie it back to which plants and which production lines are going to get impacted. And by the time the information got compiled, the data was already old. And the teams executed the action based on old data, and that was suboptimal. And managing this risk was highly ineffective and inefficient and could not be scaled to handle the disruption coming from multiple parts of the globe. And that was the single driver for change.
Ravi, that is very relatable. That seems to be the story we hear from most companies these days. So what did Navistar decide to do?
The Navistar decided to move from a reactive to proactive planning and risk management and create real-time visibility across their end-to-end value chain and enable collaboration that included the supply ecosystem, 3PL, warehouse, and factories. And the team evaluated Tada's digital twin technology through a POC. And after a successful pilot implementation in 6 to 8 weeks, we scaled the platform globally across suppliers and factories.
Wow, that seems very complex with so many players involved. On top of this, moving from reactive to proactive planning at that time, did I hear that right? This kind of digital transformation is a large undertaking. How did it happen?
If Sajid were here, Sri, he would have explained more in detail, considering he and his team have worked on it diligently to get it off the ground. We had a few workshops engaging the operational teams to understand the gaps and waste in the process. And in collaboration, we defined a future state. In about 6 to 8 weeks, we showed the art of the possible and did a pilot. And once the technology got proven, it became easier to buy in from both bottom up and top down of the organization. And that is how it all started. And thanks to the Navistar management team, this project was undertaken, and we are here talking about the success.
I'm sure Navistar, like most of the companies, have lots of ERP and MRP systems. Were they not delivering the real-time end-to-end view of the supply chain? Can you please shed some light on that?
Like all other large enterprises, Navistar was no different. They had different systems that have information about their supply master, their suppliers' demand, supply and distribution. And many of these systems were good, but at the functional siloed level that they're designed for. However, to get real-time visibility, end-to-end visibility, data from these systems need to be connected, cleansed, harmonized, and then only you can derive real-time and actionable insights. For example, a transportation system will provide you with where the part is in the network. And when the part arrives at the warehouse, it doesn't cite the status and how it affects the manufacturing line or the product. And this kind of capability we enable with Tada and provided that visibility for all the process partners to have real-time visibility to align demand and supply across the value chain.
Wow, that's a lot of data to connect. This is something most companies ask. Did you replace any of the existing systems?
We used Tada to help create a digital twin of the organization, and we call it digital duplicate. In that process, digital twin of the part, every supplier, every person were connected in a self-updating network. We didn't replace any system, but instead connected to the data that was residing at every system and brought that data to the digital twin to get those real-time insights. And by using our patented digital twin technology, which we mastered, we were able to do it in weeks instead of the traditional model that probably takes years.
Wow. Did I hear that right? Did you say weeks versus years? These type of projects can take many years to implement. Can you walk us through the journey of how you got this supply chain control tower implemented so quickly?
Absolutely, Sri. Let me walk you through a slide and let me know when you can see it. Mm-hmm. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can see your screen, Ravi.
Fantastic. So when COVID hit, Navistar saw shortages from China, and they didn't have any visibility beyond the four walls. Tada got engaged in doing a pilot. In about 6 to 8 weeks, we created a digital twin by connecting their supply chain network that included the China suppliers, the 3PL, warehouse, and factories. And once we created that digital twin of the organization, we rapidly built use cases to provide visibility to demand and acknowledgement to the demand from the suppliers. And based on this acknowledgement and the inflow of material that is flowing across the value chain, we translated that information to risk and coverage to the facilities, which we call it the material availability. And from 2 days of visibility that they had, they now got 16 weeks of visibility at a part level, supplier, production, and a product. That is when the teams got excited and we decided to scale it across the global suppliers. As part of the scale up, we connected 104 data sources, from ingesting the data to cleansing and enabling 7 capabilities to align demand and supply across the execution and planning windows. Apart from EDI acknowledgement and material availability, we have enabled multi-tier collaboration to map the multi-tier supply network. Inventory collaboration, where suppliers and Navistar have transparency to inventories in the network and can collaborate on optimizing. Capacity, suppliers collaborated with Navistar on capacity at a value stream level to assess the gaps in the planning window and address the risk proactively by collaborating with the suppliers and the supply development teams. There are executive metrics, right? All of this, executives had a view of the health of the supply chain and corrective actions and exception management, where all the exceptions are not handled outside the platform, but inside the platform through intelligent workflows where the suppliers, the value chain partners, all of them are collaborating to manage these exceptions. Now we have around 3,500 users on the platform, and we have different personas that are looking at this information, and there are workbenches where they are synchronizing the demand and supply. We have planners, supply development teams, there's executive teams, and command center teams, all working to proactively balance the supply and demand equation across the chain. And as a result, Sri, we seen significant efficiencies with the planner. Instead of, right, before Tada, they went to multiple different systems. It took significant time to understand the risk. Now it is all click of button. And they're taking actions. They're not synthesizing the data, but they're taking actions based on what the data they have and ability to synchronize the demand and supply. Now they have visibility to 16 weeks and 6 months to a year in the planning horizon. And they're able to move from a reactive to a proactive risk management, improving builds and outcomes for the network and making it highly agile and resilient.
You know, Ravi, onboarding global suppliers with so many users worldwide, I think I heard 3,500 or something like that, is not easy. Digital adoption can be a huge challenge. So what did you guys do to improve adoption?
Adoption was very critical for Navistar team, and this was an expectation. And there was strong impetus to make sure the technology is easy to use for all the personas that were involved on the platform. And we provided extensive training to the users, and we integrated intuitive training guides that was right within the platform. And we also created a highly responsive structure, both Navistar and Tadar team, to address any open issues. So we are resolving and making sure there are no issues for the users to manage the platform. And above all, we created, just like any other Plan, Do, Check Act, compliance metrics. We put in those metrics in place to assess the adoption. And there was a governance to ensure any gaps that we have, we are addressed by the code team.
So, Ravi, the adoption is a huge deal, and these tips are very, very insightful for our audience. What next from here on the Navistar journey?
Our next step is to connect the multi-tiers of the network, bring visibility to demand across the tiers, understand the inflow of material that is coming through the tiers, and assess the risk and the availability, right, to the network, and create this collaboration across the tiers to proactively manage the supply shortages. The team is highly excited, and we are looking forward to creating this capability.
This is very exciting, Ravi. Looking forward to those next steps. So to close, a lot of providers have control towers. What makes the Tadar control towers so different?
Number one is we have data fabric that allows you to connect multiple data, people, and technologies. And our patented digital twin of the organization allows you to increase efficiency and effectiveness and create an unparalleled end-to-end visibility. Number two is our capability to enable agile development versus traditional waterfalls. So every 2 to 3 weeks, you can add capabilities to the platform at a rapid pace that the users can utilize and create value. Number three is our domain expertise. We are all supply chain experts and passionate about supply chains and have solved complex problems in the multi-tier supply chains. And that allows us to navigate the technology, the process, to deliver not just a capability, but also the outcomes that enterprises are looking for.
Ravi, I'm sure the listeners saw tremendous value in how Navistar was able to mitigate their supply chain shortages using the supply chain control tower. As part of this session, I'm sure the listeners have been able to understand how it all started, what kind of problems that Navistar has faced to begin with, what kind of challenges did they have to deal with, how did they move from a reactive to a proactive planning and execution space, what kind of areas did they solve, whether it's data, systems, adoption, so on and so forth. And then what are some of the next steps that they're going to go through? With that said, I'll hand it over to the audience to see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Sri.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. So we do have a couple of questions actually for our audience, and this will give you guys a minute or two. If you do have any questions that you'd like to ask Sri or Ravi, they will be happy to answer those questions at this time. So just going to go ahead and we're just going to get a gauge here on, do you intend to deploy digital twins for your supply chains? And there's 4 options here. Is it 0 to 6 months? Are you planning to deploy within maybe 6 to 12 months? Are you planning to deploy more than a year from now? Or are you still researching? And so you can find your mouse on your desk there and select a response. Make sure you hit the submit button at the bottom of the question there. We will try to look at our responses here. Interesting. So maybe people don't know exactly what they're looking for their deploy from digital twins in the upcoming years. So our next question that I'd like to push to our audience here, if you can please select one of the following options. What is the biggest constraint in digitizing your supply? Our first answer there is data in disparate systems, takes too long, data quality, or limited team bandwidth. Those are the 4 options there. If you can take a second, please just select one of the response from the radio button and make sure you're clicking on the submit button on the bottom right-hand corner of the window. We'll collect your responses. Here we got 50-50. So the biggest constraint we've found from those watching are that it takes too long or that there's limited team bandwidth. Very interesting. So what we're going to do now is take some audience questions. So Sri and Ravi, thank you so much for talking about the case study there. I would love to just dive into some questions from the audience that have come up. So our first question from the audience here is, I'm a supply chain planner. I saw you had a planner workbench on one of your slides. Can you share more about it?
Thanks, Candace. I think this is my favorite workbench, and all the planners have their secure portals. When they open Tada, they have a proactive view of managing the supply chain constraints, and they know precisely by date, by part, by facility, and line where potential disruption will occur. They also have a digital twin of a part that they can navigate to understand the source, the historical performance, and pinpoint where the problem is in the network. Also, they get to see where the inventory is available in the extended supply chain network, which they can leverage, or if there are no options, they can raise a corrective action to collaborate with the suppliers and the supply chain partners to mitigate risk.
We have a few more questions rolling in, so I'll just get right on to our next one here. Mm-hmm. The question here is, we have issues with suppliers sharing information. Can you guide us on how you guys have resolved this?
That is interesting and a very critical one for any adoption. So we have packaged some essential ingredients that we brought them together. Number one is a top-down communication on why this program is essential and what is in it for the suppliers and the value chain partners. Number two is secured portals, and it was a big ask, right? Everybody is worried about security these days, and every supplier had their own view of their and the Navistar business. And we made sure the technology was easy for them to onboard and utilize it on a real-time basis. All they needed was a Chrome browser to get started, and they could upload their information or through spreadsheets, or in some cases, we gave options to integrate to their systems. Also, the last but not the least is we incorporated a few metrics that helped improve transparency and trust between supplier and the Navistar team. All in all, right, these were the ingredients that made it easy for us for the suppliers to onboard and share their information.
Thanks, Ravi. Okay, our next question, and again, if anyone from the audience wants to send them along, please do. And here we go. Our next question from the audience, this one for you, Ravi, is what was the one big success story for you from this project?
There are quite a few, and we have seen massive value for the customer and the ecosystem. I can't disclose all the numbers here, but for me personally, it is empowering multiple partners in the value chain, all the way from the planners, the suppliers, the command center teams, the supplier development teams, to have visibility at their fingertips. And it saved a lot of time for them. In one case, right, instead of going to 6 different systems, multiple analysis, Now it's all a click of a button. So it created an agile and responsive supply chain. And especially with the burnout that all of our supply chains, right, and the teams that are working on these supply chains we have, I felt this was a big win.
Perfect. Okay, you guys, so we have one last question from the audience here, and I'm just going to push it out to the slide area as well. So the question here, we currently have no visibility into our supply chain risk. If we get you in, have a project coming up, where do I need to show results? What can you deliver?
This is tricky. It depends on the capability and the complexity that we are looking at, not knowing which industry and how many systems, how many suppliers, right, and value chain partners that you have. And but what we can answer is we can connect you with your critical suppliers and your critical supply chain partners to create that end-to-end visibility, probably in 12 weeks. So we can hit the ground running. You will see in about 6 to 8 weeks a minimum viable product that we can pilot with a critical few and then expand that scope. And I'm thinking probably in about 10 to 12 weeks is we can get it up and create that value.
Wow, that is great. Thank you so much. So to both of you, thank you so much, Sri and Ravi, and thank you so much for your interesting and very informative webinar. To anybody listening, if you'd like to listen again or send it along to your colleagues to listen on demand, it will be available shortly. And thank you to you, wherever you are, for taking the time to listen in, and we look forward to having you at our next event, which will be January 27th, 2022 at 1 p.m. Eastern, where we'll be featuring our case study, how a consumer goods manufacturer empowered transportation and warehouse decision makers to execute predictive business decisions. And remember to check out more of our upcoming and some of our already on-demand webinars at www.industrialtransformationnetwork.com. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you all.